Yeah, I think my dad really enjoys it. He's been a mechanic his whole life. I think he enjoys the job satisfaction of it when the car's finished and done, but he genuinely just hates cars.
For the longest time, people have watched Mat Armstrong build his YouTube empire one insane car rebuild at a time. If you follow the channel closely, then you already know his father, Tony Armstrong, has appeared in videos, helping out in the workshop, giving advice, or quietly working in the background. But for years, viewers kept wondering the same thing. How much of Mat's success came from his dad, and how much did he really do on his own? So tight, because by the time you hear everything Tony finally admits, you will look at Mat Armstrong's journey very differently. The rumors Tony finally addresses. Talk about speculation surrounding the working relationship between Tony and Mat started quietly in Leicester and then slowly spread across the automotive community until almost everyone seemed to have an opinion. Conversations kept coming up about how much involvement Tony really had in Mat's projects.
Yeah, I think my dad really enjoys it. He's been a mechanic his whole life.
And curiosity only grew stronger as the channel became more popular. Some people began asking if the father and son connection gave Mat an advantage that other creators did not have. Others wondered if most of the technical work actually happened behind the camera, with Tony handling the difficult parts while Mat stayed in front of the lens. Questions like that kept coming up again and again. Was success coming from talent alone, or did years of experience from Tony make the biggest difference? The more the channel grew, the more people wanted clear answers. From the outside, the situation looked easy to judge, but once details started coming out, the picture looked very different. The working relationship turned out to be built on mutual respect rather than favoritism. Tony carried decades of experience from working in garages and fixing cars long before online videos even existed. Mat, on the other hand, brought a completely different strength into the partnership. Knowledge about content creation, filming, editing, and modern mechanical work came from years of practice and trial and error. When both worked together on camera, the result looked natural because each person handled a different side of the job. Instead of one person carrying the other, both sides filled gaps the other side did not have. That balance explained why the collaboration felt real instead of forced. Still, curiosity did not stop there. Once people accepted that both had skills, another question started showing up. Did financial support from the family garage make everything easier than it looked? Speculation about money and support became another topic that refused to disappear. Some critics believed that having access to Tony's garage meant free tools, free space, and free parts. And that idea made some people think the path to success had been smoother than normal. A question naturally followed. Would the channel have grown the same way without that advantage? Observers inside the automotive scene talked about how expensive car builds could be, and that made the situation look even more suspicious to some. Tony later explained that the reality did not match those assumptions. According to Tony, Mat worked through the business the same way any employee would. Even during the years when BMX riding took most of the attention, Mat still worked different part-time jobs to pay for daily life and for projects. Work happened at the garage, but work also happened delivering food, working behind a bar, helping in automotive retail stores, and spending time in tuning shops. Money for parts did not appear from nowhere. Materials had to be paid for, and skills had to be learned, step by step. The garage helped as a place to learn, not as a place to take shortcuts. That explanation changed the way many people looked at the situation, but another doubt still stayed in the air. If money was not the secret, then what about the early builds? Who really did the hard work when the camera was not recording? Questions about the early restoration projects became one of the biggest talking points among followers. Some people found it hard to believe that a young creator could complete complicated repairs without heavy help from someone with decades of experience. Doubt grew stronger when the builds started getting more complex. Could all that work really come from one person still learning the trade? Tony decided to answer that question directly, instead of letting rumors keep growing. Tony explained that the actual work on those early cars was done by Matt. Knowledge came from years of watching, listening, and learning while growing up around the garage environment. When problems appeared, advice came from Tony, but the tools stayed in Matt's hands. Guidance happened the way guidance usually happens between an experienced mechanic and someone still learning. Suggestions were given, mistakes were corrected, and lessons were learned. But the responsibility for the job stayed with the person doing the build. That detail helped explain why the projects improved over time instead of looking perfect from the start. Real learning always shows progress, and the videos showed exactly that kind of progress. Bigger collaborations later on, like the Ferrari F430 project, also created questions at first. Some people wondered if those builds meant Tony had taken over the work completely. The truth sounded much simpler once explained. Those projects were joint efforts where both worked side by side, each handling different parts of the job. Experience met fresh ideas, and the result came from teamwork instead of one person doing everything. Looking back at all the rumors, the pattern started to make sense. Every time success grew, new questions appeared. Every time a question got answered, another one took its place. That kind of cycle often happens when people watch a family working together in a public space. Is the success real? Is the help fair? Is the work shared equally? Those questions kept coming because curiosity always follows popularity. Once the full explanation came out, the relationship looked less like an unfair advantage and more like a combination of experience, effort, and trust, built over many years. Instead of one person standing behind the other, they stood side by side, each contributing something the other simply could not replace. And that balance became the real reason their work started to stand out more than ever. What happened next explains everything about how their partnership worked. Tony's role in Matt's YouTube success. A lot of people who watch Matt's build videos usually notice Tony Armstrong showing up again and again, and the interesting part is that Tony never looks like someone who is just standing there for support. Tony always seems to have something useful to say, something practical to point out, or some small detail to fix that nobody else noticed at first. That naturally makes many people wonder what really goes on behind the scenes when the cameras are not focusing only on the car. Tony's presence adds a layer that feels more personal than technical, and that difference is exactly what makes the videos feel less like ordinary repair content and more like something real. During many builds, Tony helps diagnose problems, suggests what to check next, and sometimes even explains why a mistake happened in the first place. That kind of involvement changes the whole mood of the workshop. Instead of feeling like a serious production set, the garage starts to feel like a family space where people are simply working together and figuring things out step by step. And honestly, does that not make the whole thing easier to watch? A lot of automotive channels show perfect work and perfect results. But here, the process itself becomes the interesting part because conversations, reactions, and small disagreements happen naturally. Matt made a decision early on to keep family members involved in many projects, and that decision shaped the atmosphere of the channel in a big way. When Tony appears, the tone immediately feels warmer, almost like listening to two people talking in a real garage.
So if someone attacks you, they can't get you.
And then elbow delete.
Instead of performing for an audience. That raises a simple question. Would the channel feel the same without that family presence? Probably not, because the interaction between father and son creates moments that cannot be planned. Sometimes a repair goes wrong. Sometimes a tool does not fit. Sometimes a plan has to change halfway through. And those moments feel more real when another person is there reacting honestly. Tony's experience also plays a big role here. Years of working in garages gave Tony the ability to look at a problem and quickly suggest a direction. When Matt runs into something unfamiliar, Tony often steps in with a calm explanation, not in a way that takes control, but in a way that helps move the work forward. That balance between experience and curiosity is something people notice very quickly. One person brings decades of knowledge, the other brings excitement and willingness to try anything. When both come together, the result feels natural instead of forced. The workshop dynamic between Mat and Tony is probably one of the biggest reasons many people keep watching. Sure, the cars are interesting, the builds are detailed, and the restorations are impressive, but the real hook often comes from the relationship itself. How many times has a build gone wrong and the camera caught that moment of frustration on Mat's face? And how many times has Tony stood nearby, looking at the same problem, offering a calm suggestion that slowly brings the project back on track? Those small exchanges create a kind of honesty that is hard to fake. Viewers are not only watching bolts being tightened or engines being rebuilt. Viewers are watching a real interaction between two people who know each other well enough to joke, disagree, and still work together without tension. That raises another thought. Would the videos feel as engaging if everything went perfectly every time? Probably not, because the setbacks, the laughs, and even the small arguments make the success feel earned. When something finally works, the reaction feels genuine, and that feeling keeps people coming back. Another interesting thing is how Tony handles attention. Even though the channel became very popular, Tony never acts like someone chasing recognition. Tony shows up when needed, helps with the build, says what needs to be said, and then quietly steps back. That attitude keeps the focus on the project while still letting the audience feel the importance of the partnership. Some people might ask why that matters so much. The reason is simple. When someone looks comfortable without trying to be the center of attention, everything feels more authentic. Tony's role never looks forced, and that makes every appearance feel natural. The camera captures conversations, not performances, and that difference is easy to notice even without thinking about it. The emotional side of the partnership became very clear during the project in 2025 when Mat decided to rebuild a flood-damaged Aston Martin DBX as a surprise for Tony. That moment felt different from a normal build right from the start. Instead of only focusing on repair work, the whole project carried a sense of meaning behind it. Many people started asking the same question while watching. Why choose that car? And why make that build so personal? The answer slowly became clear as the video moved forward. The project was not only about fixing a damaged vehicle. The project showed appreciation for the early support that helped Mat get started in the first place. Years earlier, Tony had helped with tools, advice, and encouragement, long before any large audience existed. Now, the situation had changed, and the surprise rebuild showed how that support came full circle. When the finished car finally appeared, the reaction spoke louder than any explanation could. More than 6 million views gathered on that video, and that number showed how invested people had become in the relationship itself. People were not only watching for the car, people kept watching because the bond between father and son always felt genuine. And those small, honest moments reminded everyone why the channel became so special in the first place. That connection built the audience's trust over time, which makes what comes next for the Armstrong team even more important to see. Stay with me. What's next for the Armstrong team? A lot started to build up toward the end of 2025, and from that point, things took a very serious turn for Mat and the kind of projects being handled. Information shared across updates explained that one of the biggest moves involved a damaged Bugatti Chiron Purse Sport.
Was a Bugatti Chiron Purse Sport out in Miami.
A rare machine with only around 60 units ever made. Just hearing that number already raised a simple question. Why take on something so rare and so complicated instead of something safer? Well, details showed that the car originally belonged to an American influencer named Alex Gonzalez.
United Kingdom? It was Alex, the original guy that owned the Bugatti in the first place.
And after a serious incident, insurance companies declared the car a total loss before the vehicle ended up at auction. Now think about that for a second. A machine built at that level, written off completely, and then picked up again for a rebuild. That alone sounded like a risk, right? Still, Mat moved forward, traveled all the way to Miami, and began inspecting what many would probably walk away from without a second thought. That decision alone already set the tone. This was not just another rebuild. this was something much bigger. From what was explained, the Bugatti project pushed everything to a different level. Regular car rebuilds already come with stress, but this one added layers that made every step more intense. Sourcing parts became one of the biggest hurdles. And honestly, how easy could it be to find parts for a car that only exists in such small numbers? That question kept coming up because nothing about this process sounded simple. Each part required deep technical knowledge, strong connections in the automotive space, and a lot of patience. Nothing could be rushed. Nothing could be guessed. Everything had to be exact. At that level, even a small mistake could cost a huge amount of time and money. At the same time, another project quietly entered the picture. Around July, Mat picked up a crashed Ferrari F43. Oh, that had previously been used as a rental coupe. Now pause for a moment and think about that. A rental car already goes through different drivers, different habits, and different levels of care. Add a crash on top of that, and the condition becomes even more uncertain. So why go for something like that? The answer seemed to sit in the challenge itself. The Ferrari rebuild involved tracking down original spare parts and making sure everything matched factory standards. On top of that, there was also the plan to install a Capristo exhaust system, which added another layer of performance and sound tuning to the project. That meant this was not just about fixing damage. This was about bringing the car back in a way that respected both performance and identity. Now here is where things get even more interesting. With all this complexity building up, Tony's role became even more important. Years of experience inside a garage environment gave Tony a kind of instinct that cannot easily be taught. Think about this for a second. What happens when a completely unfamiliar system shows up during a rebuild? What happens when something does not match expectations or refuses to behave the way it should? That is where experience steps in. Information shared through updates explained that Tony provided the diagnostic foundation needed to break down problems step by step. That kind of support made a real difference, especially when dealing with machines that operate at such a high level. And honestly, that dynamic between Mat and Tony added something deeper to everything going on. This was not just about tools, engines, or parts. This was about a working relationship that started years back and continued to grow. Many people might ask, what makes this partnership stand out so much? The answer felt simple: consistency, trust, shared time in the workshop. That kind of connection does not just appear overnight. It builds over years of working side by side, solving problems and learning from mistakes. Looking ahead, nothing suggested that Tony planned to step away anytime soon. Updates made it clear that Tony intended to remain actively involved, especially as projects became more demanding. That raised another thought. Would things slow down at some point? Or would each new project keep pushing the limits even further? From everything shown so far, the direction seemed clear. Complexity was increasing, and instead of stepping back, both Mat and Tony appeared ready to meet that challenge head-on. The workshop itself also played a big role in all of this. What started as a simple space for learning and experimenting gradually turned into a place where high-level restorations could happen. That kind of growth does not happen by accident. It comes from experience, patience, and a willingness to take on bigger risks over time. And now, with projects like a rare Bugatti and a rebuilt Ferrari on the table, the level had clearly changed. At the center of everything sat one key idea: adaptation. Each new project introduced new problems, new systems, and new expectations. Instead of avoiding that pressure, both Mat and Tony leaned into it. And really, that is what made everything so interesting to follow. Not just the cars, not just the results, but the process itself, the learning, the setbacks, the small wins along the way. Because at the end of the day, what keeps something like this going? Is it just passion for cars? Or is it something deeper, like the drive to prove that even the most damaged machines can find a way back? That question stayed in the background as each new update unfolded. And based on everything happening, one thing felt certain. Bigger challenges were not slowing anything down. Bigger challenges were only just getting started. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.